Welcome to Lincoln County Courthouse. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission will begin with just a few introductory remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it will be available at any time at lincolncountysd.gov. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff findings. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the County Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first for persons in support of the application and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions on change of zones will be scheduled for an additional public hearing during an upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting. The decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. Thank you for your cooperation. A quorum of the Planning Commission is present. We'll now approve the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, can we get a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes?
Motion by Boots to approve.
Second, Green.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So we have Boots, Green. Okay, now we've got the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? Mr. Brown?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else have any changes to the agenda? Can we get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved, Green.
Second, Boots.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, next we'll move to public input of non-agenda items. So if there's anybody here that wants to speak to anything that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do that. All right, seeing none, we'll close the floor to public input on non-agenda items, and we'll move to our first item of business. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning and Zoning Department. This first item before you this evening is an application for a conditional use permit. This is for temporary fireworks sales. So I'll pull up the exhibit there once. So the subject property, as you can see, is it's directly adjacent to Highway 106 or 271st Street. This is just off of the T exit of Interstate 29. Subject property, as you can see, does have an existing building built on it. For those of you who remember, this is the former Thornton carpet building. It's been sold and it's currently being utilized for retail purposes on the property. Subject property is Zone C commercial, as is all adjacent properties on that south side of 106. What is somewhat unique about this is some of you might be questioning why we're not doing this as a joint, is that recently, as you recall, the county did change the joint jurisdictional boundary at the city of Sioux Falls. So this property is now solely within the jurisdiction of the county. It is not under the jurisdiction of the joint zoning regulations. So this is looking, the property would be looking onto the east. That's the building or the parking lot where the property will be sold there. So the applicant did submit an application to the department. This is for temporary fireworks sales. It'll be June 27th to July 5th. Hours of operation be 9 a.m. to approximately 11 o'clock p.m., depending on the sales. The applicant is going to have, the applicant and the spouse would be the primary employees on the property. They would be responsible for all types of security and those different types of things. Again, this is a temporary use on a commercial property. What's unique is Previously, the board has approved fireworks sales in the A1 agricultural zoning district, if you recall. The A1 agricultural zoning district does not allow sales within a building. The commercial zoning district does allow fireworks sales, retail fireworks sales within a structure. The applicant's not proposing that, they're proposing to use the temporary tent use on there. The staff is also restricting it to that, so that in the future, if someone wanted to do that, they would have to come back for a county approval on that. So one thing is, the applicant did update the site plan a little bit, but as conditioned, it would be the staff would approve the tent based on the existing zoning requirements. So it's a little hard to see on this drawing here. Maybe I'll go back to this one, but so there is some parking. Those of you who've been out there, you'll notice that there is some parking spaces directly up to the right-of-way. And so actually those parking spaces are within the right-of-way. So staff did work with the previous owner on it. We're in works to work with the current owner on it to prevent any type of parking within the right-of-way. So the only change really to the site plan would be is that the applicant's proposing to move the tent closer up to the building to get it out of the right-of-way area. As well as all customer parking would be outside of that right-of-way area as well too. So as I mentioned, staff did receive the application, have been in discussions with the applicant and the applicant's spouse. But with that, did identify that this is a highly developed commercial area. There's quite a bit of retail. The previous use of this building, current use of this building is retail. From a staff perspective, we don't think that there's going to be any unreasonable impacts on adjacent properties, considering the zoning, considering this is a temporary type use, and considering that this is within the T growth area. T did not really have any comments associated with this particular application. We did post the property. Staff did, or the applicant did send written notification of this public hearing out to adjacent properties within 500 feet. As of this public hearing, staff has received no comments regarding, or questions regarding the proposed application. So staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit with the 7 conditions that were outlined in the staff analysis. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions that the board has for staff at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Brown?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Toby, I think, so this is just for this year, is that right? Or is this for also subsequent years with the same 9-day time frame?
Correct.
Subsequent years, same 9-day?
As conditioned, yep.
Right. I believe in the past, not this exit, but one exit further south, we had a fireworks deal where I thought it was going to be, I think on that one, we had done it where it had to be reviewed after like 3 or 5 years or something. Understanding it was a different exit, kind of a different circumstance, but, so there is no end date to this, it's,
Correct.
okay.
And the staff did, or the board, or the planning commission did attach a condition to a previous application we just had last month. Staff didn't recommend that condition on this one because the property is differently zoned commercial. We don't think there's really an impact to that, but again, that's the board's discretion if they want to put that as a condition on there.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question, Mr.
Yep.
Brown. So the application, does that stay with the applicant, or could it transfer to a different person?
Yeah,
I
good-
understand that it stays on the property, but how would that,
Yeah, no, it stays with the property.
okay.
So there's a lease between the applicant and the property owner, but we're not involved in that part of it, so we're just involved with the land use.
The applicant is not the property owner, correct?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
so if passed as is, the application would stay with the property and a different operator could come in down the road?
But they would have to stay within the conditions of approval.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
The applicant is in attendance this evening, so.
Okay. All right, I'll ask the applicant to come forward. Welcome.
Thank you.
State your name. Just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shanshan Wang from Independence LLC.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Michael Barker. I'm her spouse.
All right, very good. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are asking here.
We would like to set up a temporary sales for retail this season, the 250th anniversary of America, on June 27th until July 5th. We're proposing using a tent and utilizing the parking lot, staying within the rules and conditions set forth by Toby and Lincoln County. And we'll have security. We'll have, I've done this in different states, Iowa predominantly, and yeah, that's what we want to do, is just retail fireworks.
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Green? No? All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, I'll now ask anybody in support of the application to come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the floor to that, and we'll ask for anybody in opposition to the application to come forward. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the floor to public comment and entertain a motion from the commission. Mr. Green, your question to Mr. Brown, I suppose, if that was a condition that you would like to explore, you could either add it with your motion or we could do it afterwards.
No, I think I'm good with as is, understanding the difference in zoning. So, yeah.
Good.
I'd make a recommendation to approve with staff's 7 recommendations.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second, Boots.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion, comments? Mr. Mosier? No? Mr. Boots?
Oh, looks pretty straightforward.
Commissioner Schmidt? Nothing?
Let's celebrate.
All right. All right, I think it's good. We'll go ahead and call the roll. Commissioner Mosier?
Yes.
Commissioner Boots?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott is also a yes, so congratulations. Thanks, guys. All right, Mr. Brown, that's it for official applications, official business. We'll now move on to kind of our other business, I guess we're calling it. And we'll start with discussion on the solar energy. Mr. Brown's going to come forward and give a few comments.
So this is a continuation. We started discussion in January of this year, that after the denial of the application that we had for solar, there was a discussion amongst the board if there was any changes that needed to be made to the ordinance. As you recall, and I could say this for all 3 items, the Planning Commission has initiated this discussion of this. So typically how it works under state statute is that the Board of Commissioners would remand an ordinance back to the Planning Commission, conduct a formal public hearing forwards and against, and then forward a solid recommendation up to the Board of Commissioners, who would then decide to adopt or not adopt a regulation. But we've decided, the Planning Commission's initiated a discussion of this. Through that discussion, we've come up with some draft language. None of it is to a point where you would have an actual public hearing on it, because the Board of Commissioners has to remand it back before we can expend county funds and do a public hearing on this. So for the change that has been made since the last meeting is that staff was directed to add the signage requirements, the noise requirements from the conditional use requirements for the wind energy systems. So staff did do that. So again, how this would work is solar energy systems that are non-accessory ones. So accessory solar is currently a permitted use within Lincoln County. We've approved a number of them throughout the county, primarily for agricultural type structures, but a number for residential structures as well. But this particular regulation would create a conditional use permit for non-accessory solar type systems. So if they're connecting to somewhere to generate electricity to send to the grid, that would require a conditional use permit. And so we've established some setbacks and established some screening requirements, noise requirements, signage requirements, as well as different things where all internal would have to be buried for equipment, electrical equipment. And then foundation posts would have to use some mitigating equipment, so there's no vibration to adjacent properties. And then decommissioning would occur, there's some standards for that. But just a reminder is that the decommissioning is not in the name of the county. The decommissioning would be in the name of the landowner. So that if there's any requirements to come into compliance with the ordinance after there's a need for decommissioning, that is the responsibility of the landowner. So we protect the landowner through making sure that there's some financial surety with the landowner. And then add some requirements for density as far as if there's going to be a congregation of systems that would be some additional review by the county. So again, I don't think this is a perfect at this stage, but we do need to send something to the commission if that's the wish of the planning commission, to have them remand it back to us, and then we can have a formal public hearing where we can notify through the legal requirements with it. Or the planning commission can make a determination that there's no change needed with this ordinance. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, Mr. Brown. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Brown?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll, as we've been doing with these, we'll now just open up the floor to public comment to anybody that wants to speak to this subject, so.
Good evening, Sarah Stever, 46850 276th Street in Lenox. Back again to talk to you about the Virginia Tech study on what happens with property values that surround solar farms. So just a reminder for those of you who haven't heard this from me for the 15th time. They did a study over a period of 15 years considering 8.8 million real estate sales transactions next to 3,699 solar farms. Very thorough study. What they determined was if you're within a half a mile, the drop in your residence value is probably 7 to 8%, which in considering Lincoln County, typically your value goes up every year. That's a huge delta. If it's ag land, the good news, bad news is that your ag land can go up almost 20% in value, which is great, maybe. For taxing purposes, it's not great if you're trying to actually expand your operation. So those types of farms, I would say that, coming in do put a pressure on land values and land pricing. So there is an impact to this, and I frankly wonder if they belong in ag at all, and that's one of the things that I would call out that's still, I think, missing, and this is how we zone these. I'd like to see them be zoned in designated districts, not necessarily A1. I'd also like to see a larger setback from property lines, and then the most important thing that I think is still missing is that notification of people within a 3-mile radius. So that's the radius, according to that study, where property values, especially homeowner values, are impacted. And I think in all fairness to those people whose property values are going to drop, they should be notified so they can have some public input. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, I just want to catch up on my notes here. Okay, anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bethany Eric, 46747 291st Street. Good to see you all again. I'm sure we'd rather be doing anything else rather than this, but a couple quick things on the solar. One of the other pieces that I'd asked for, and we discussed at our last meeting, was downward lighting. That was a requirement for many of our other CUPs, that we had downward lighting so it didn't glare. And I agree with Sarah that the setbacks are not large enough, and we should have notification of neighbors for public input. Thanks.
Thank you, Bethany. Okay, anybody else? Nobody. Well, if somebody wants to come up here in just a little bit, you sure can. We're not, this isn't, official public hearing, so we aren't opening the floor, closing the floor, I guess. Commissioners, what are your thoughts? I guess we're to the point where, at least the way I see it, the options are, we send the draft to the county commission as is, see what their thoughts are on it. We could ask Mr. Brown's office to add some of these extra things in here, and then send it, or we leave things, I guess, the way they are, and that is, we don't have an ordinance at all, and we don't have a clear direction for solar going forward.
Can I give you a tongue-in-cheek?
Yeah, Commissioner Schmidt?
We do.
Great.
We do as commissioners do best. We'd probably remand it back to you.
With no comment.
Comment. Seriously, Eric, you ask a good question. You know, I don't think that we definitely need some guidelines. We definitely need something, because as our county continues to grow in so many directions, you got so many competing different things going on. You have this movement to maintain agriculture. You have a movement to expand the amount of animal units that we can have. And at the same time, you have pressure from people that want to move out into the country and they want to live in an angelic life. So you have all these competing things. So I think it's incumbent upon a commission to have guidelines that are fair and equitable, but that they have something. And at the same time, there is a considerable interest, and I think that on solar farms, as there are in alternative energy ideas. So I think we're going to have to put our heads together with you guys and come up with something that the public can live with, and at the same time doesn't kill the whole idea of having solar power somewhere in our county. So I don't know if that's a good answer, Scott, but that's the best I can give you tonight. And that's from my point of view. I mean, we got new commissioners coming in. We got one sitting right over here. I'll be happy to hand you these hot potatoes, Amy. But anyway, those are the issues that you're going to have to deal with. So, we're going to have to put some heads together and start working cooperatively, as we haven't done in the past very well.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
can we scroll down a little bit, whoever has control of the deal? I'm curious, I am appreciative of the downward lighting piece. And I assume it would be under that A1 right there, under operational areas. But if it's not in there, I would recommend adding downward lighting on the site. And then beyond that.
Just a second, Commissioner Green. Who's in control of the screen here? Oh, it's up here, Mr. Brown? Maybe we could have you come back, and you might be able to answer a few of these questions, too.
I'll just run the screen.
I assume it's in 1A, Toby, under the operational areas.
I mean, you could add it to in between 3 and 4 or 5.
I would recommend it, and then beyond that, I think it's probably incumbent upon us at this point to recommend just moving it forward to the commission, because I don't know that we've received any feedback from the commission on it at this point. Much like other things, I do believe that it will end up back with us, but hopefully it ends up back with us with comments, for us to be able to continue to move forward and then move from there. So I think as is, again, not perfect, but I think it's probably incumbent upon us to get some commission feedback at this point.
I think, from a staff perspective, though, the comments that Sarah brings up is, I think the planning commission should engage that part of the discussion. If you think that if this is an appropriate land use in the A1 agricultural district, or if you think it wants to be excluded from that district and put in like the C or the I1 or I2 zoning districts. So we drafted this more like wind So wind is allowed within the A1 agricultural district. But again, this is a different land use, a separate land use, so it's up to the board to decide that. But that would be one thing that I think that the Board of Commissioners probably want some clarification on from you guys as a board to how you want to handle that. And then the setback is, that's an ongoing discussion about how you would want that handled, I guess. But that would be something for you guys to probably talk, and either, we can continue discussion as well too, because we want to get a good draft up to them as well too, so.
I think the reality of the situation is when it comes to other zoning districts, A1 agricultural, like when you see these, they're out in the rural areas. We don't have anything out in the rural areas that would be zoned that way. I think based on previous conversations that we've had, building one of these in an industrial district or something like that is cost prohibitive. So at that point in time, if we were to recommend that it goes somewhere else other than A1 agricultural, you're kind of just ruling it out because I believe it's probably cost prohibitive. But that's just my 2 cents.
Or you force yourself into spot zoning, which are.
Spot zoning, which
our comprehensive plan
brand new
specifically.
comprehensive plan says we don't want a spot zone.
And I
right?
think that was the discussion we had at first, is
Right.
that, we could rezone this to commercial or industrial, but then we'd be right back to square one where we started, right? As far as the setback goes, again, I'd have to go back and look at my other notes, but one of the discussions we had, now, I believe this is just a hard setback, there's no waivers, so on and so forth, but one of the options that we had discussed, whether it was last month or the month before, was turning the setback, making it 1,320 feet, and including a waiver process with it, I guess, so I don't know what, I know Sarah and Bethany had both brought up setbacks, and I guess I would be in favor of exploring something like that, I guess. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are. Commissioner Mosier?
Well, as Mr. Chair, I guess a couple things. It's been mentioned a couple times in past meetings about the 3-mile notice. I guess, it'd be nice to get that added if it's gonna be an A1. And then I guess the other part too, I've seen other places, we're not really Arizona, I know, but they have these things over parking lots. I've seen them on top of buildings. So, I don't know I guess to me, I don't understand on the outset, why it would be cost prohibitive to not have it or to have it in an industrial zone versus, I guess to me, I'm just a layman, so I don't know why it would be.
That's an interesting point. Toby, would this restrict it from being an industrial and commercial?
Yeah, it can't be under this, but we're not to a draft stage yet.
No, I understand,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
as this.
As written, it would only be allowed in the A1, correct? Yeah.
That's an interesting point.
And then to kind of address Commissioner Moser's comment, so the actual section that we would amend would be in the notification part, and I must have shot right by there. Right here. So for everyone's knowledge, this has just been updated, so our codified laws have been updated to include the pipeline ordinance that was adopted. So staff was waiting really for this to take effect, but we can draft out, this would be the section that you would amend it. It would set the distance for what that is. So we can add that to this. It'd be a separate section than what we were looking at with previous draft in there, but we can add that to that. So the traditional setback notification is 500 feet for conditional use permits. CAFOs and WECs are the 1 mile. So I guess another question would be is, do you want to change the rest of them as well too with that? So.
And I guess, one thing that doesn't get brought up enough, but when I talk to people about this stuff, the thing that a lot of people just come back to is they don't want to see these things. They don't like looking at them. So I mean, that's like part of the issue too. It's kind of like, the word eyesore gets thrown around. No one looks at no one looks at an industrial site and thinks, oh, that's majestic, right? I mean, they look at there's like paintings of landscapes, and then if you saw a solar farm in the landscape of the painting, that wouldn't really be aesthetic, I guess. So, I mean, there's that part of it too that, I guess, that citizens talk about. Maybe don't get addressed at the meetings, but.
Mr. Chair, the state of Minnesota passed several years ago where municipalities could build a solar farm next to their particular city of any size. And I traveled from Albert Lee north, and I saw several of these places, and they have anywhere from 3 to 5 acres of solar, which is dedicated to the city itself. And it's a means by which, right or wrong, that municipality is able to control and maintain and keep their utility bills quite low. That has, I don't know if that's even around, but I know there are many, many, many cities in Minnesota that they adopted that, and it has seemed to be fairly successful. So I don't know that solar is something that's not going to go away. I'll throw another bomb at you that I think what you're going to have to face, and I'm jumping way ahead, but I think you're going to have to deal with a nuclear situation in the coming years as well. So while solar is one and wind is one, nuclear is not far behind. So if you haven't got gray hair now or worried, Scott, hang on to what you got.
Well, just so we don't scare people, is that does require a rezone to an I-2. It would be a conditional use permit, so.
Well,
Just so we don't concern people there.
Toby,
We are covered.
I'm
We
not
have
trying to
regulations.
create any problems for you, Toby.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So, Mr. Hannibal, you want to come up and speak? Why don't you come forward? Thank you, Mr. Brown.
47788, 289th Street. I'm not really familiar with what's being addressed here, but I mean, one thing that comes to my mind is with these solar farms, they can vary so much in the size from, entire sections to, like you say, 3 to 5 acres. So in my mind, it might be a good idea to have different sizes or different classifications for them, especially when you're bringing it out into the agricultural area. I mean, I think the community, and at least me as a resident out there, I'd be a lot more amiable to having a few of these, 3 to 5 acre small ones instead of having, one the size of a whole section nearby. So, your setbacks and things like that and what they have to do to get that approved could vary on the size of it. So I don't know whether that's been considered regarding this matter or not.
Thanks for jarring my memory. I believe, unless I'm just imagining it, but that was one of the discussions we had maybe last month or one of the others, was that we adjust the setback based on how many acres. As the acres, the size of the project goes up, obviously the setback goes up, and I don't know or am I imagining that, or did we kind of discuss that?
I think you talked about it.
Yeah, no, I think we did.
But that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hannibal.
Thank you.
Yeah, come back up, Bethany, and remind me how that discussion went. I could probably.
Yeah, that was me that brought that up, so thanks for remembering. That was definitely a point of discussion along with the lighting and the signage requirements and everything else. But we did talk about looking at the total size of the number of panels, because obviously we're dealing with the number of glare, how many generators they're going to be using, all of that. So, and that the environmental impact of the damage that these things can do to agricultural land. I'll remind you also from our last discussion that the potato factories, Frito-Lay, will never farm that ground again after solar panels have been on that agricultural ground, it pollutes them forever, because when the geese and ducks land on it, or the hail lands on it, the geese and ducks typically think it's water. That's a bad thing. They break the glass, and all the leaching metals go down into the soil, and it's never farmable again. In Minnesota, they had a group of sheep underneath solar panels, and the sheep all died within 1 year of cancer. So environmental impact definitely has a point, and that was why I brought that up last month. So hope that helps you clarify.
Yeah.
Any questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you, Bethany. So I guess, just to move things along, go ahead.
Samuel Annabo, 47784 289th Street. You brought up a good point, Seth. The eyesore, wherever we're going to put this, people are going to complain about it. If Sioux Falls, in my opinion, if Sioux Falls needs one, and they want to take a whole section, don't bring it into our ag zone. Put the setback right up next to Sioux Falls. And then they'll have to deal with the consequence of it, of their property values. Everybody values it up there, wants it, and it's a good thing for a holistic approach. But there's so many apartment buildings that have temporary living. You have short amount leases. Who cares if a section right adjacent to that takes off into a solar panel field? That's my opinion. You know, don't bring it into the ag zone. Don't put it farther south and then have us deal with it. And it all gets wired right back up to Sioux Falls. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.
So again, in interest of time, and we can continue to discuss it, but I want to stay focused on the points that have been brought up, and if we want to move, so obviously the main point is just the draft of the ordinance itself. The four things that I've kind of written down that have been requested to add would be a 3-mile notification, in increased setback of some sort, whether that be a hard number with waivers, a hard number without waivers, I guess, or a moving setback based on a scaling up setback as we increase in size. And then currently, as written, would just be allowed in the A1. Would exclude it from your industrial and commercial. And then, the downward lighting deal, that to me seems simple. I think that's a no-brainer. If you guys want to move forward with this, I think that's an easy addition. Personally, I think they all are. So let's just start. 3-mile, first of all, what's your guys' thought about moving a draft forward to the county commission?
I think it makes sense if we can get to consensus on these couple points.
Okay. All right. So
We've been talking about this since January.
Yeah. So if we're going to do that, then let's dig into these points quick. Or it doesn't have to be quick, but let's dig into them. So what's everybody's thoughts on a 3-mile notification?
Yeah, I think that would be good to add into it because the facts are there that on property values and stuff, and I think that's an easy one to add in. And again, we're trying to move something forward that the commission can give us a little feedback too, so.
And not detrimental to the,
Nope.
to an applicant or to the project. So, yeah, I guess unless anybody's opposed to that, are we good with adding that to the verbiage? Okay, check. Setbacks, what's everybody's thoughts on that? Any ideas where we could, I have some ideas, but what's everybody else's?
What are your per acre ideas?
Well, I think what I said last month was, starting to come back, was the only one of these that we've seen, right, was like short of 80 acres. That was the application, right? So that's all we have to go off of. I mean, we can, we can envision larger, smaller, whatever, but if we go off of just what we've actually had in front of us, that was 70-ish acres. So if we, and in my opinion, I mean, we have discussed about, number of panels, output, different types, this and that, but in my simple brain, it's like, whatever kind it's gonna be, and it could change as we go forward, it's still gonna take up acres, right? Like, that's easily measurable, and it's easy to continue on with. So if we just took what we already worked with, and again, we divide that by a setback, and we get down to a feet per acre number, then as the project gets bigger, the setback gets bigger, I guess is my thought on it.
Yeah.
Makes the most sense.
Commissioner Green, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the per acre makes sense, because, yeah, I mean, if someone develops a solar panel that's as big as my phone and, you know, that can generate 10 kilowatts, then hooray, but, we're not there yet.
You don't have to have much of a setback. then.
No,
Yeah, I agree with you. So how would the math work? I mean, if we started with, I guess even if we started, and I think I also referenced that currently the minimum setback of our livestock ordinances is 1,320 feet, so I think that's a fair place to start. You know, so if you divide that out, yeah, if you went like 15 feet per acre, that'd get you a quarter mile on 80 acres roughly. 16 feet would. I don't know if that's a decent place to start. Sarah? What, do you have any thoughts on setbacks? As a starting point?
Yeah.
I think that's what we talked about as well, yeah. That'll be the sub factor here, okay. So if we went 15 feet per acre, just to give you an idea, that last one was roughly 70 acres. That's 15 feet, that'd have been 1,050 feet.
Do you remember what the Wilson house was from the edge of that zone line?
I can look,
Right, it was butted right up to the road.
yeah, I can look at
Yeah, it
it.
was certainly within it, within that number.
Oh, yeah, it was
Well within,
right next to it,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry, they're not, you're right.
Mhm. So just, again, we're not making policy tonight, but to keep the ball rolling so that Commissioner Schmidt and his cohorts can debate this at length, send it back with lots of good recommendations, does everybody think that's a place we could start as far as setbacks go? Okay.
I like it.
So 15 feet per acre, all right?
Can we specify a minimum though?
Yep.
You've got a 5 acre, that still could have tremendous glare.
Mhm.
Still have a lot of problems for you, in terms of eyesore factor, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there a minimum amount that you can, so it isn't just 15 feet away?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at this point, or
Eighth of a mile? 660 feet? Or 750, or?
750 is a nice number just to start with.
It's what's in the
Again,
ordinance, or what's in
It's
the
what's
draft.
there, so it's in the draft, 750, and again,
So we go a 750-foot minimum with an increasing setback of 15 feet per acre. Is that fair? Okay, we'll start with that. Okay, now on to, as far as limiting to just A1, what are your guys' thoughts on that versus allowing it everywhere?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would hate to see it handcuffed just to ag because, you know, it's been stated that it can be on roofs, it can be here, it can be there. I mean, I've seen some things through looking this up that obviously these are a lot of things that are test run. I've seen it, it was over in Europe where they were putting them between the railroad tracks on top of the ties. I mean, it's just something that, again, you're trying to find places where you can use it. Obviously, you know, whether it's gonna work or not, I don't know, but I would just hate to handcuff it just to ag when there's other ideas that are out there where it can work.
I agree, and Commissioner Mosier spoke to it. I think that I think the potential could be to go alongside with commercial and industrial uses. And so if you guys are good with that, we would add those, obviously not the rural, well, I shouldn't say obviously, what about rural residential?
No.
No, okay. So L1 and commercial. All right, and then lastly, I think so we got downward lighting. Would everybody be in favor of adding that verbiage?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Brown, is there anything else anybody else wants to talk about after that? And again, just so everybody's aware, we're not making policy tonight. This is a working draft as a recommendation. It'll end up with the county commission. Hopefully they'll have good conversation on it and they can work from there. Here comes Mr. Brown.
Yeah, you know, from a drafting perspective, there's a couple questions we got, but I still think it'd be better maybe since we're making these amount of changes, maybe we should punt till next month, just so we take a look at all these things and how they're gonna look. So it doesn't push us off anything, but the art of policymaking is the words that are written. And I get I wrote down what most of you said, but I think you need to look at what it's gonna look like in paper too, so if we just continue discussion next month, that'd be staff's recommendation, so we can draft this out, because I think you need to look at how that's gonna work on so WEX and KFO is really notifying 1 mile, but we're increasing it for solar. You know, the public might want to additionally comment on some of that stuff too, so. But that's just my 10 cents, but you guys can proceed with what you want. The only question I have is, so on the 750, is that the starting point, and then the 15 per acre is after that then? Okay, and then is there a waiver on that or not?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think waivers are fair.
okay.
What's everybody else's thoughts?
No, I think they're fair.
So just to clarify, so I thought what I understood was 15 foot per acre. So I could do the math, but, you know, at 80 acres, it was gonna end up being essentially a quarter mile. Not starting at 750 and adding 15 feet per acre.
So it's the 750, everything would have to be 750 feet up to 50 acres. And then once because would be 50, you know.
Right,
And
but I
then
think Toby's
anything-
question was, we start at 750, and if it's 2 acres, at that point, it would be 780, right?
No.
So that's the way I think I
It's
heard
just
Toby ask the
it's just
question.
It's the minimum.
It's the minimum. So it would be,
At 80 acres, it'd be 1,200.
right. So if we were to do the math, right?
So 20 acres would be 750, 10 acres would be 750, 40 acres would be 750.
Right,
51 acres would be 765.
right.
But what is it when I have 10 acres?
750.
750.
So the math is when you get to whatever the magic number is, that is
50.
15, what is it, 50? Mm-hmm. Yeah,
50 acres, yeah.
so,
Okay.
so I think that was your question, right, Toby?
So I think where Mr. Brown is at, or what he's asking is, do we want to, have them put these additions in, and then we come back again next month and do this again, or do we want to just put the additions in and send it to the county commission and they can start their discussion? Commissioner Schmidt, what's your opinion?
Either way, it'll probably end up in front of the commission. You know, I mean, if you waited, and if you had the commission, they're gonna have an open process, and all the citizens have the right to come in and voice their opinion. I'm not trying to speedball this thing or delay it or anything. I have no problem with you presenting that, because there has to be a starting point, and sooner better than later in some cases, because you guys have spent a lot of time on this. What, January you started? So,
What's the public's opinion?
Toby, do we have any pending applications that there are applicants that are waiting for this to be passed?
No.
No.
The impetus really for this amendment is that it's unclear in the regulations how we want to treat this. What we know is, minus all the details and things we're talking about, is that more than likely the public wants this to be a conditional use permit, so they're notified and they have a chance to voice opposition to it. It's unclear in the current regulations. So that's the main impetus, but behind that, so.
And I assume based on the rest of the agenda, we will probably be having similar discussions again next month, no matter what, right?
Correct.
I guess I would like to see it going forward, but I also would like to see us follow Toby's recommendation to get it wrote down.
I agree.
So we see it, and then basically it'll be what everybody has suggested again tonight, and some of the stuff that we just didn't get in there that's been suggested before. It's in front of us. Next month, we could move it on to the commission, and the commission can go with it from there. So I don't think it hurts to wait a month just to see the language put down that been suggested again tonight. mean,
I agree.
we want to move it forward, but at this point, all these meetings have been very productive, and
Yep.
I'd rather see us get it right than move something up to the commission, and then some of the wording ain't quite right, and then it gets drug out there, so
Yep.
I don't think it hurts to wait a month.
And Mr. Brown, what, I think what everybody's hearing is that would be your preference, your staff's preference? Working
Yeah, I
on
mean,
for another month?
Yeah, I mean, the words are important. We want to make sure that, because I don't want to have a Scribner's error. I want it to be what you guys want the word to look like, so.
Okay. Well, we'll, I guess unless somebody thinks different, we'll get these, basically 4 additions to this. And we can talk afterwards, so we all make sure we get it right. And then we'll come back with that ordinance and, go forward with it. We good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Move on to item number 2.
So I'll give a little prep to that, and then you can take over, acting chair. So again, this kind of came about by one of our citizens really brought forward the topic to you as a board that there's some issues potentially with the Class A CAFOs in the county with being an unlimited setback per the ordinance. And so Commissioner Scott kind of took the legwork on this to kind of throw some ideas out there about some ways that we can really address that Class A CAFO that really has, has an unlimited number with the same setback on it. So as drafted to this, skin strike-throughs and underlines would be, strike-throughs would be deletions of the current law, underlines would be additions to the current law. So again, This is an initiation by the Planning Commission, and I appreciate, and I think the public appreciates too, that the board's been doing public input on this. We've had some very good dialogue. As you're aware, once the board remands this back by state law, we will have a public hearing. At that time, we'll be for and against speak, and by state law, is really not allowed to interrupt those people or answer questions. So this forum that you guys are doing through this process has been very productive to get some good policy, get some good public input, dialogue back and forth. But what this proposed draft would do is to take away, to get rid of the classifications and really just go to a number animal unit type structure. So permitted specials would be 200 animal units to 999. So currently 199 and below is a permissive use in Lincoln County. This would just clarify that with the animal unit numbers. And then the magic number, the 999, again, as we talked about this last month, is that the state of South Dakota requires a general permit for 1,000 animal units and above, generally. So that the wishes of the board was to, and for those who are not aware, is that once an application is received in the county for a Class A CAFO or that, we lose essentially some control over it because they have to meet the state requirements. The state dictates a lot of those requirements that they have to abide by. The only real jurisdiction that the county has once they're a Class A is just the setback from a dwelling. And so the conditional uses would be 1,000 animal units or more. And then clarified some of the language as far as number one is, I think we've addressed this before, is that it was somewhat unique in the current law that the Board of Commissioners deferred increase of setbacks to the Planning Commission, but they did not include themselves in that requirement. And then the ordinance really gives no guidance of what dictates what would be an increase by the Planning Commission. So from a legal perspective, and I'll defer to legal counsel, but I think that's a concern. And then changing or clarifying the outermost part of the feedlot, which would be the livestock buildings and all types of manure storage areas, which is generally where the order comes from on the facility. And then in the setback chart, so we left in, these are all the current setbacks for the classes. So the only one that was really addressed in this draft would be the dwelling setback, churches, schools, and then non-agricultural commercial activities. There's always been a discrepancy of what essentially is a business. We have no definition within the regulations. So from a non-agricultural commercial activity, that's pretty clear of what that requirement would be. So from those particular land uses, then the setback would be changed to 1.32 feet times the animal units number. And that's what the board talked about last month, and so that's the draft that's for discussion tonight. So any questions for staff at this time?
Any questions?
Not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm going to start by addressing, Mr. Mosier, you had some questions last month that I don't think you got very good answers to. And so I did a little research, and the big difference, you were asking about the difference between Lyon County and here, and how that's, why it isn't handled the same in South Dakota. And here's what I found, is the state of Iowa, their DNR has a general setback system that the whole state goes by. And so since the state has something, the counties can't go off and do their own thing because the state would supersede that. So like, for instance, Lyon County, they just follow what the state says. And so you're exactly right. They just feed livestock until they need a state permit, and then they're under the state's control. And they do nothing else. Sioux County does the same thing, but they do have a separate setback chart for manure facilities. So like, if you've got an open pit storage or blah, 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 they have a setback chart for that. But for the actual livestock facility, they again need to just follow the state permit. Now in South Dakota, the state does not do that. They put the, as far as the authority of the setbacks, whether they're from dwellings or anything, that authority is within the county. And so that's why we have, I guess that's why we discuss it here, and why you'll see it'll be, Lincoln County will be different than Union and Minnehaha and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to clarify that, because that was a good question, and it actually got me kind of thinking about something, but that is the difference. So, Mr. Green, you were gone last month?
I wasn't here last month, no, so excited to hear the conversation.
Yeah. So anyway, I think where we left it off, and Tommy did a good job, this is an example of a resident that came during the public comment period that I called for at the beginning of the meeting, and challenged us as a board and asked us to look into some of the inconsistencies in our livestock ordinances. And so we did that. And I, as the livestock representative at-large person, I looked into it, gave a presentation last month, and if you were here last month, I guess you got to see what I had to say. If you didn't, it's on YouTube. And I too seen that we have discrepancy when we do the math backwards and we take it into math that is a setback of feet per animal unit. And so the discussion went from there that what would a setback chart look like if we just used the same number and applied it evenly across, right? So we would just take so many, just like we talked about with the solar, it would be so many feet per animal unit, and that would be that would be your setback from a dwelling. And the reason we started with 1.32 feet is that is currently in the current ordinance, that is the math that the max class C and B, when you do the math, that's what it equates to. So we thought that was a good starting point. I'm not suggesting, and I don't think anybody last month was suggesting that that's a number that we would have to fall on, but for discussion purposes, that's where we started. So if that gets you kind of up to speed, Mr. Green, I think everybody else was here. So with that, we'll open, the floor is open. If anybody wants to come up and comment and give their comments on this draft and this idea, or any other thoughts.
Good evening. Dwayne Carlson, 29287 467th Avenue, Centerville. Wondering why we don't use parcel lines instead of the edge of the property. The parcel lines are really easy to figure out. Sometimes the corner of properties are on the front of the parcel line or in the middle or behind. If you use the parcel line itself, it seems like it makes things a little easier for that number to come out. The other thing is, where's our protections for Century Farms and our rural churches? For what I see that's changes there, we're taking a lot of feet away and getting closer to our rural churches. I had a member of a rural church contact me this afternoon, and we need to change that to a percentage, like 1% of the days for the order footprint, and try and make it so there's at least a 48-hour application notification. If you're going to have a wedding or some type of an event in these rural churches and you have somebody applying manure out there, it doesn't make for a nice evening.
Dwayne, not to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
So as far as the setback from the churches, that didn't change.
I thought that's what we seen here, that they were going to,
No, that's exactly the same.
it's
as
still
well.
the mile?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as, the only thing that is being discussed is just from the dwellings.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify something, because I think it's a good point. When you say parcel line, do you mean parcel line from, like a dwelling, or like a quarter of ground that nobody lives on?
Where that, that property line starts.
But the property line of something that has a dwelling on it.
Right.
Okay.
Correct, yes. So instead of going off the corner of that building, go off of the property line, which gives you a little more leeway from the
So-
building surfaces.
So property line from the livestock facility or
Yes.
from the people's residence?
From the people's residence property line to the livestock property line.
Okay.
Right.
Got it. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I just
that's,
wanted to clarify a few of those.
I'm happy to be corrected on that.
Well, you're not, yeah, I wasn't correcting you, but I just want to make sure on the churches, because.
Yeah.
Yeah, rural churches are important to me, and we didn't change that.
Well, some of those are, we have good neighbor policies that we don't do that sort of thing when we're going to have events like that. And if we're looking at Class A's or some of these larger entities, there really isn't that, you don't get that same good neighbor policy because they're more involved in their investments than they are what's going on with our rural.
Good point.
Then the other thing I had a concern with is we're talking quite a bit about our CUPs and the designations of what we're putting in here for stipulations. But what do we have for a code enforcement officer? Who's going out and making sure that these things are being properly done? I think we need to make sure that we have protections in place. So, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Steve Brindley, 47494, 284th Street, Lynn Township. I guess I have a couple questions because I'm ignorant on a couple things. So if you have a CAFO for hogs, do you double the setbacks if you add a chicken barn or a turkey barn?
It goes under animal units, doesn't it?
Well, you mean in our current situation?
Yes, yeah, say you got 1,500 sow unit and you want to put up a 5,000 layer hen. Do you double that on the same property?
You would have to go through, if you were gonna have, if you had a CUP right now, Toby, and you wanted to expand it, you'd have to get a whole new conditional use permit. So, but I can't say that we've ever done that, and I've never thought that through, but let's say you're permitted, I think what you're asking, Steve, is if you're permitted for a Class B, and you want to expand to a Class A on the same site, then yes, you would have to, the way the current ordinance is, either your setback would have to increase or you'd have to get a waiver.
Gotcha.
Yep, yep.
I guess
You can't sneak in the back door with a B and then turn it into an A.
Okay,
Yep.
that's was my one question, and probably should have been in a few more of these, but I do think there is the overall sense of having so much per foot per animal unit does make some sense to me, rather than, to me, it seems more fair and equitable to those that maybe they don't want 10,000 units, animal units. They want 1,200. To me, that makes some sense. The setback should be different. And thank you for your time and your attention to it.
Thank you, Steve.
Hi again, Sarah Stever, 46850, 276th Street in Lenox. May I approach with a handout?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Those are just a list of the resources that I used to prepare this thing that I'm going to say. First, I wanted to state that I believe livestock production is economically vital to our county, and it's an important way to bring kids back to the farm because of the price of land. Our farm has 20 head of cattle, which is just a hobby farm for us, and our neighbors have a feedlot with 200 to 300 head of cattle on it at any given time. Got a couple of lagoons. I walk by there, 100 times in a year. Never a problem. That seems to be a scale that fits really well within what's even central to northern Lincoln County. But the question remains, is there a size of CAFO that's too large? How do we find the balance between people on acreages, our small and medium farms, and large-scale animal production in a way that ensures profitability for everyone, but lets others live out their dream of acreage ownership? So I'm going to urge you to read that American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers from 2024. It's a peer-reviewed land value impact study which says farms with a gross income of $100,000 meet nearly 95% of their expenditures locally, while farms with gross incomes in excess of $900,000 spend less than 20% locally. This means that most dollars made by the industrial operation do not stay in the community and help it thrive, but instead leave the community, draining it economically. There are other studies that are listed there that have been conducted across the United States that consistently show residential property values decline significantly in proximity to CAFOs, large CAFOs. Research published in Land Economics found homes within a half mile of a large hog operation can lose up to 9% of their assessed value. Homes next to poultry CAFOs can lose up to 32%. So we talk about Iowa a lot, but in a study, hog CAFOs decreased the values of homes in a half-mile radius of the facilities by 40%, within 1 mile by 30, 1.5 miles by 20, and 2 miles by 10. In addition, an Iowa study found that while some agricultural land values increased due to increased demand for spreadable acreage, total assessed property value, including residential, fell. So these losses have real consequences for local tax bases, school funding, and economic community viability. Another study found that, and this was in 1999, so take it for what it's worth, an increase in food stamp utilization was associated with industrialized hog production. So that's probably North Carolina. But the last one that I've got from Iowa was what actually helped rural communities thrive was not the number of hogs raised, but the number of hog farmers. Smaller operations, small and mid-sized operations are more nimble in responding to market demand, diverse in cropping, and numerous, ensuring that small towns have enough people to thrive. So back to my question, is there a size of animal operation that's too big, one that swamps the environment around it? My understanding is the upper bound of CAFO AUs is set through the state through the nutrient management plan for the CAFO. But who checks those numbers and how often? A plan we just saw go through here in Lincoln County this year for a dairy listed fields in their nutrient management plan, and they had never approached the landowners for actual permission. So again, as Dwayne had mentioned, like who's the sheriff that comes around for this and double checks these things, and who makes sure they're making and keeping their promises? And then have we run the numbers on the impact of the county and township roads? If property values for the area around a CAFO drop, then so does the tax revenue. We know that CAFOs cause wear and tear on the roads. Do massive CAFOs really add up to benefiting the county and townships? How about the added manufacturing like we see in one of the dairies south of town? While we need to make it easier to start small operations, they often grow into larger ones. So a setback from the property line when building a CAFO makes a good neighbor. There have to be some sort of minimum setbacks in place. If we allowed mobility, and this is going to bleed into the building eligibility discussion, if we allowed mobility within the county for our housing eligibilities, the migration of acreages to the north could help fund small-scale animal ag startups. So you've got farms down here who want to start an appropriately sized CAFO. Can they sell their animal eligibilities to help fund that, to seed those as startups? I think that has awesome possibilities for our young farmers. I also think it might free up ag land to farm with fewer complaints from people who are not accustomed to the smells and sounds. I also urge you to consider a cap of AUs that fits in our county. DANR considers 700 head of dairy cows to be a large CAFO. Is that the right size? I just have the question. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. Just comment that I I can't agree more that my experience is showing, my 25-some years in ag sales and management, that it isn't the number of animals, it's the number of farms that really has an impact on a community, not only economically, but viably through churches, schools, volunteer boards, things like that. And that's a huge passion of mine, so thanks for bringing that up.
Ernest Stroutmeyer, 28503 474 Avenue, Worthing. I've lived in Lincoln County as a resident my entire life. I live 1.5 miles from the first confinement, 2 miles from the second confinement, and 2 miles from the proposed confinement. There's days in the summer when I can't enjoy being outside because of the odor and the stink from the confinements, and it seems to be some of the time the worst ones are in the fall when there's cornfields that are grown, and you would almost think that if that's gonna filter it out, it would, but when you have the humid weather in the fall, it just carries on and it brings that stink right across. It permeates our house to where it stinks. We have that fragrance inside too. It smells so bad, it's as if you were right at the confinement facility yourself. It makes it impossible to enjoy being outdoors. Our planning and zoning board members have made claims that are false, that our buildings are newer and safer and better. So, wanting shorter setbacks. If you want shorter setbacks, then bring the odor footprint down to 1 or 0% from the parcel line. Then I'll be in support of it, but until then, there's nothing to change or discuss. For years, this whole system has been bought and paid for by out-of-state, out-of-country companies, special interest groups, commissioners and planning, people that are members that have interest in making money in the future, and they should have no business being allowed to have any say-so in the changing of our laws. Original confinement setbacks were written only by producers. As I recall, about 12 years ago, there was a setback of 1 mile from churches, schools, and business. There was a problem with that. The problem was they couldn't fit any more confinements in. They ran out of room. So we changed the rules. The producers and the county decided to change those standards to just 1/4 mile, all without proof or reason behind it, just looking to squeeze more in. Lincoln County is becoming more and more populated every year, which should be good for everyone. But most of the confinements are being built with no houses, no family living there to run the operation. So when you hear about kids that want to come home and live and work in these places, it's not true. Confinements are not actually adding new families and neighbors to our area. We're just bringing in buildings for out-of-state or foreign country owners. And along with that, all the problems that come with them, terrible smells, dead animals, biosecurity, and other farms, the risk to other farms and economic development and business profits leave the county. I'm concerned about special interest groups being in charge of planning and zoning. Zoning has always been about protection from the parcel line back. These changes were made through discussions and negotiations and conditional use permits. The board members always say that these discussions, negotiations, and conditions use permits are really good so that the neighbors and the applicants can discuss these things, but it never goes the way of the local people. About 12 years ago, there was an ad hoc committee composed of landowners and producers, and they came up with some good standards. They wanted a Class C to be increased to 2,200 feet, which they had documentation and proof of it being a better distance. Commissioners on planning and zoning boards, without reason and without proof, without a basis, came up with 530-foot setbacks. The other commissioners saw through it and kept the same, at least of changing it back to the 1320. I'm afraid when somebody is standing in front of the board that's going to make money from changing these laws, and be even more afraid when someone's sitting on the board that's going to directly or indirectly benefit from changes in the law. Some of the so-called facts they are giving you are not true. And just like anything in business, if something sounds too good to be true, better dig into the details and find it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stratmeyer. Anyone else? Yeah.
I have a quick question. So under this, like the class, what would it be, like, the, what is 200 to 999 head, there'd be no class, so you could just do it? Okay, I'd really like that. And then the having it equitable, so it's by foot past Class A, I really like that, because I've seen places like, I used to haul livestock across the country, and a lot of the time I go to places like the Panhandle of Texas or Kansas or Nebraska, and you'd see these places where they allowed these massive CAFO operations. And I mean, to the point where 10,000 is a small guy around there, you're talking 80, 90, 100,000 head feedlots, and all you see is dead farms all around them, because they came in, they're able to pressure everybody out, the farms couldn't afford to keep the kids around. You either rent your ground or you farm for that operation, or you get the hell out of the way. And I've seen it just destroy these communities where then you go into the small town and there's really nobody there besides, there's no farmers there. It's just, you know, the usually immigrant labor that's working there that lives in the town now. And they're completely different. The churches are boarded up, schools are, you know, boarded up. And I've just seen it destroy a lot of places that didn't get ahead of it, and now they're moving into our area because it's too tough to deal with. There's too much competition down there, so I'm just worried that they'll drown out all our smaller farm communities like they did down there. So, thank you, that's all I got.
Thank you, Mason.
Hi again, Bethany Eric, Centerville, South Dakota. One of the things when I looked at your presentation, I watched it twice, so you should feel good. I've actually watched what we talked about last month. I have a question about the math. Everything that, and I did get an email with your animal units, but I didn't see a delineation on the animal units per animal. Do you have a chart somewhere that shows like a pig equals 0.4 animal units and that sort of stuff? Because that wasn't included here. So I looked at some other animal units, and a 55-pound hog was,
So Bethany?
Yeah.
It is it's in the current ordinance.
Okay.
It's in section 154.250. There is a chart in,
154.250.
Actually, I think you might have to kind of do the math backwards, but I do have, like a pig is
154,
a
250.
pig
I
is-
just like to see that, because when I was
Yeah.
figuring up the math,
Because like a pig is 0.4,
So
a
if-
dairy cow is 1.4.
so that's a very important question for discussion, because if it's 0.4 for a hog, that's 50 pound, or 55 pounds or higher, when I did the math, that would equal, times 5,000 hogs, 0.4 times 5,000 hogs would equal 2,000 animal units. What that equates is that they can put 5,000 hogs a half mile from my house. Or am I doing it wrong? That's why I'm asking, that's why open discussion.
It's 2,000.
it's the total animal unit times either the 1.32,
Yep.
Okay.
so it'd be over.
So it'd still be,
What would the math be? Could you just clarify?
Yeah, well-
Thank you for jumping in. I just want to make sure that because 1.32 looks a little weird and
2,640
feet. Yeah.
away from me, which has changed from the past then would be what? In the past, if they had 5,000 hogs, would be at 3,960
Yep.
feet.
So
So you
then
cut
you
me
would
by
have to-
1,000 feet. Guys, that's kind of a big deal.
But then it would be even with, yeah, and.
It is less. And so,
In this math.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to explain last month.
Yeah.
Is there's these gaps, right? Like we have these classes.
Right.
And so your minimums, are inconsistent with your maximums, and we have
Right.
these in-between areas.
yeah,
What currently would happen, is if somebody was to apply for a 2,000 head,
Mm-hmm.
that would be the minimum Class A, so then they'd go with the minimum standard, which would be 3940.
so essentially we're losing some protections.
If you went to a system like this, there would be, on the minimum ends of what the classes are, it would be bringing them down to what the maximum end of it is. Where
Okay.
you'd be gaining it would be now, take a 10,000 head animal unit that's going off of a 39 or whatever, a 3/4 mile setback. You're at like 0.4 feet. So that would be increasing that.
I see that, but I see the smaller operations, and I also see the operation near me running with multiple LLCs. So let's say, for example, we have a quarter of land, it's right by my house, and we have 5 LLCs, and they all say they're gonna run 1,000 head in each barn, but they're different LLCs. Does that mean I have no protection?
Well, it's what could currently happen too under the.
I hope this discussion changes its direction, because we know Betty Adden is not going to be here as a commissioner, and she is our representative, okay? And then if we get somebody that's playing dirty, we as landowners have no protections. Don't do this to us, guys. Leave the lower end intact. I mean, I'm pretty upset by this, honestly. And the other thing I would like clarification on is, if it's over the 999 animal, you said then the state takes over permitting? Okay, then it means it's not allowed, over 999 animal units, it's not allowed in Lincoln County? I'm just trying to understand if
No,
somebody
it's a
bigger.
conditional use process, just like it currently is.
Okay, so it would still be a conditional use permit arguable here in Lincoln County, not at the state level, right? Because there was some reference to the state taking over that aspect, anything above 999, so, okay.
They currently, if you're over 999, the state requires a state permit anyhow.
Okay,
So you have to do that in addition to your conditional use permit.
well, I thank you for running through the math with me. I'm more scared now than I was before. I beg of you, protect us. We deserve to live there. I deserve to live from being able to enjoy my whole property, from property line to property line. I don't ask for much. I just don't want 4 LLCs popping in a bunch of hog barns right by my house. I think the minimum setbacks, we're gonna end up losing residential out there at all. And I don't think that's your intent, but if it is, God help us all. I mean, honestly. So I don't think it is, so, but that will happen, because nobody wants to live that close.
So for example, and.
Yeah, let's do some math.
Yeah, and as we talked last week, or last month, this is a starting point.
Yeah, it is.
But if we wanted to use the starting point of 3/4 of a mile and 2,000 animal units, it'd be 1.98 feet.
Okay.
So if you plug that in, then you don't go
No,
backwards at
please
all.
do.
Then you don't go backwards at all on your minimum.
Then we don't go
class.
backwards at all. Please
But
don't.
then you make it more for the smaller operators.
Right,
So we're not doing math on the fly, let's make sure.
Yeah.
doing it right.
This is where we're
This is the current
currently.
setbacks,
Yep.
okay?
And I also question why it says 1.32 and 1.32.
Because that's, he's
so-
calculating, that's what it is.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this would be the new setbacks.
Right.
And that's just, like I said, as we discussed last month, that was just a starting point.
Okay.
And then the discussion was to be, what should that number be?
Yeah.
And you're the first one to bring
I'm the
that up.
first one to beg for
Yeah.
bigger numbers.
Yeah, and I'm not.
Because
opposed-
my well water
I
is
don't think-
dependent,
I
I
don't think
mean,
anybody's opposed to,
to bigger numbers away from,
or to have the discussion about the numbers, right? I mean.
thank
yeah.
you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you for walking through it with me,
Mm-hmm.
and thank you, Toby, for bringing that up. The animal units was the piece that I wasn't familiar with, and I'm glad we'll review that a little bit more going forward. So
Yep.
I don't have anything further unless you guys have questions for me.
Nope,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
So just clarification though, is this would be the proposed. So currently, most swine operations are $24.99. So currently, they're at $26.40, so $2,500, if you're doing the rough math, there would be $3,300, so it's increasing. It's not decreasing in any way.
That's not right, because you're saying animal units, you gotta take that 25.
Correct.
9 times 0.4.
Correct. Yep.
So your math's way off.
Okay, yep.
So currently, I think at $24.99 is a quarter of a mile, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yep.
1317.
Yep.
And I could see this going very much like the last one we talked about where, you know, we decided there was a minimum setback, right? This is just, that's 1.32 math is what's on the screen. That doesn't mean that as part of our discussion, you know, we don't end up with a 1320 minimum. And then once you hit the 1320, very much like the last one we just talked about, then, you know, the math matters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, the real issue that we started with is that there's, you know, if you're going to that Class A, it doesn't increase, it just stays stagnant.
Yep.
So the real issue was, do we just adjust that part of it? And
Toby,
this was the math,
just
yeah.
flip over to the other chart so you can just look at the, if you guys see, you know, we're talking about 1.32, but just look above 3,000 animal units. And that's where, we notice a glaring inconsistency is as it gets bigger, we're actually requiring them to have less of a setback, and as our smaller operators, we're requiring them to have more of a setback. Per animal unit.
The minimum plus.
Good evening, Trevor Johnson, 701 North Clark Street, Lenox. I'm also joined tonight by my fiancee Sarah. Just a little background, we met at Kansas State University, and after graduating 2 years ago, we've decided to come back and as the fifth generation in Lincoln County and put roots down here. And so I'd like to thank you guys as a board for going through this process and allowing us to have input. I'm very much in support of the county board adopting policy that's reflective of and congruent with the state policy as far as thresholds for permitting. So I like where things are going with the 999 threshold and working off of that. I'd also encourage the board to maintain the waiver process. I think that's critical, especially to young people like myself. You know, if you're not able to either purchase or own the land base around you, I think that's critical. And I think it also fosters collaboration within the neighborhood and hopefully keeps animal agriculture woven into the fabric of our farming communities. But finally, one last suggestion that I'd like to throw out there from a young person's perspective is potentially opening up the opportunity for farm families or landowners to, almost like a building eligibility, designate certain plots of land as potential building sites for animal feeding operations in the future. You know, those might not be ones that exist today, but take a family like mine, for example, that's bringing 2 boys back to the operation. You know, today we may not have one, but maybe someday we'd like to, and so I think that would help increase transparency both from the landowner perspective and, you know, as it's been mentioned tonight, prospective people that may want to live out in the country or purchase an acreage, something along those lines. I think it would add transparency to the process and, you know, just get it out there that, hey, This is an existing farm family that maybe one day would like to build on this location. You know, you're more than welcome to move out to the country, but just be cognizant of it and make people aware of it. So with that, I'd like to thank you guys for your time, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Trevor.
Anybody else?
Mine's really short. Eric Hannibal, 47788 289th Street. I just wanted to say, I like what you're doing, looking at this, bringing it down as a graduated scale on the setbacks. I think you're on the right track going that way. I think the one thing that really hurts us living out in the community is these really large operations that are going on. It's really hard on our township roads, the traffic, and in my opinion, even our soil in the surrounding areas. So with these setbacks, at least the bigger operations can be farther and farther apart, so there aren't as many. And I don't know whether it's possible to maybe even cap the size of them, would be something I'd like to see. That's it, thanks.
Thank you, Eric.
Good evening, Jared Stearns, 47374 288th Street. Overall, I do think that this is a good start. I know there's a lot of discussion as far as whether 1.32 feet per animal unit is the right number. We can still keep working through that. As far as the proposed draft, two things that I would want to see. The first one, to kind of echo what Dwayne Carlson was saying, as far as where the setbacks are measured from. So right now it says from a feedlot. It got changed to from livestock buildings and all types of manure storage. I would like to see that changed to production area. South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources has that definition in their CAFO permit, and it's all inclusive. It will include confinement areas, manure storage, feed storage, deceased animal, anything really related to the CAFO activities. As far as what's the reasoning behind that, based off of the county's conditional use permit, the effects of noise, odor, traffic, air, and water pollution shall be eliminated or controlled through the use of setbacks, among other things. And while most of the odor will come from the manure and the building itself, but there will be impacts from noise and odor, things like that related to the full CAFO operation as well. So that's the first piece. The second piece, the removal of the discretion for the county for the Planning and Zoning Commission to extend the setbacks based off of unique circumstances. I would like to see that kept in, just to protect this board and the county commission from things down the line, things we're not thinking of right now, just to have that discretion for future. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
McCade Reynolds, 47475 286th Street, Worthing. As the owner of one of the hog barns that was talked about earlier, I can assure you it doesn't smell that bad. We built it right on the west side of our yard. We're there every day. I married a city gal from Sioux Falls. She come right out to the farm, built it together. She's worked on it with me. She's never really complained about it. Being from the city, it was kind of a shock for her, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary for her. So, somebody living in the country, I think they can deal with it the 2 times a year that we pump manure, which is mainly what he's probably talking about, because that would be about a half mile from his house is when we're pumping manure, which is about 2 times a year. It stinks for about, depends if it doesn't rain, it stinks for a week. If it rains, it stinks for a day because it gets worked in the ground. If we have to make the setbacks a little bit harder for us smaller guys to keep these big operations out of here, I'm fine with that, because I can work with my neighbors to make these operations work. agriculture is hard enough right now for, the guys that have been farming a long time and the guys that want to get started. We don't need our local citizens fighting against each other, trying to kill ag here. We're trying to keep corporations out of here, not trying to kill each other. So we need to keep that in mind too. But I like the system. I like what we're doing. I think we're on the right direction here.
Thanks, McCade. Anyone else?
Dana Knutson, 46526 291st Street, Centerville. I also want to thank you. Really appreciate you having this is great. Have a conversation and everybody get more public comment, the better, I feel, on this. That has not happened in the past so much. So, and I come from a 5-generation Lincoln County taxpayer family, farm background. I don't know if this is possible, but this is just one thing I was thinking of. I'm also all for the smaller farms that have disappeared over the several years. The toughest competition now that we've had recently is the larger ones, and for the smaller scale farmers and to bring the young farmers back into our community, I think would be a huge bonus to get back to where we had 150 small farmers and instead of one big guy taking the place of that. Think of what that trickle-down effect does to the local economy. I mean,
It's huge.
if someone ever did a survey, I wish, and I could see the statistics on that, of how much revenue has been lost in the last 30 years from out-of-state investors coming in, buying land, and all the different corporations and large corporations coming in. That is not helpful to the small local area farmers. And why are we having so many kids that would want to farm, but it's not feasible, and they're unfortunately moving out of the area? I mean, anything we can do to help protect our small and young farmers, I think would be great. And I do feel that we should somehow put a cap. I like the number way you're going to simplify this. If you can simplify this so everybody is more understandable, I think that's great. Wherever the number comes out at, yep. Keep on the discussion on that, but I think we're on the right avenue there. But I would agree with somewhere down the road, where are we gonna go? Are we gonna have 50,000 head on a quarter of ground? Right now, we probably got 20, I'm guessing, Without having a cap on these larger ones, I feel that that's important to keep an eye on that too, as you're making these decisions to help out with the younger ones. And I guess, as far as especially when it comes to the CUP permits, my feelings are we need to create a position, hire someone, and make that a position, because that CUP is not no more better than the paper it's wrote on, if you ask me, if no one is out there to ever check and police that. What good is it if no one's out there to enforce it, to make sure these people are following those conditions? I would like to propose, this is just a thought that I've come up with, and I'm on a Delaware Township Board. And what I would like to do is put a committee together, possibly, with some surrounding townships, see who would be interested, and possibly have that discussion of some townships going together and possibly starting a position there, whether it be part-time, or I think even better if the county would come into play with it, if they're interested. We could create a full-time position, and the county pays 50% of the salary and the townships pay the other 50%, or I'm just throwing out ideas here. And that, to have someone that would help do all this, policing per se, and checking up. And on the other hand, on our township side, everybody in the township basically has full-time jobs. And with all this RAFE funding that's going through, and different, policies that are changing all the time through the counties and state, there's never enough time for anybody keep up with this. And I think having that person help with whatever local townships that would want to join in on this to help, that would be a tremendous help. And I think that might be a thought of an idea. And then also have them go out there and have some teeth in this game to where if someone is not abiding by the CUP rules, well, then we set fines, not little $100 fines or a $500 fine, set thousands of dollars of fines. That would help go towards that guy's salary or woman's salary, you know? And so we have some teeth in the game going forward on this, and just some different options that I've thought of that I think that would be worth the discussion to think of, because it obviously, that is not getting done now. I'll guarantee you that, you know? Let's think this through and try to do as many, you know, not saying that's the right way, but it's just one idea of going forward, I guess. And the other thing I'd like to think of is, I don't know if this is even possible, but for the residents that have been here for 4 generations, 5 generations, taxpayers, and the younger families that are getting pushed out from this, and it seems like the out-of-state ones come in and they get subsidized or the tax breaks and all these breaks. Why don't we look out for our local taxpayers, our residents and citizens that have been taxpayers for years, and somehow try to help them guys out and keep it local, if that's even a possibility? I think that would be a great thing too. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, anybody else?
I think these numbers need to be increased, but I also think the other thing is the waiver process we have runs with the life of the land. I think it's high time we go through that waiver process and be it negotiable with landowners. If somebody wants to have a building for 30 years and you want to bring your family home in 30 years, it's a way for you to work together with your neighbors instead of this waiver is forever for the life of the land waiver with Lincoln County. Should be addressed and changed also. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Samuel Enago. I like the 1.32 for the total live animal unit head. If I want to get 800 head cows on my ground, that's over 1,000 feet. And parcel lines, I don't like. I like corners of the buildings. If somebody has an acreage they own 10 acres, and their house is on the one corner, and I'm gonna go out over here, who's to say why from their parcel, the corner of their house, that's fair, because that's where their main dwelling is. And I like the lifelong lease. Right to farm should be right there. Housing eligibility is always there. And cost of doing business, everything has a downside. And I don't believe that housing eligibility should be transferred. It should always stay on that parcel of ground. And that's what it is, because housing eligibilities are for the next generation, in my opinion. And I'm 5th generation farmer. So, and it should just stay the same. We shouldn't transfer all of our housing eligibilities away, because if we keep transferring them, then we're stuck. So it should be there. There's always a downside to doing the cost of business. So, and we have to all choose their downsides, and we have to live with it.
Thanks, Sam. Okay. Mr. Floyd?
Harold Floyd, 48339, 289th Street, Fairview, South Dakota. I agree with what the last fellow said about setbacks at the start in the corner of the building. Otherwise, you got somebody that's got a house on one corner of a quarter of a ground, all of a sudden you added 1,320 feet at least, and then some probably, before you can start with your the proposed setback, if you're gonna use property line, stuff like that as a start to the setback. I don't think that's probably not even feasible at all if you expect to support the livestock industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Harold. I just want to clarify that. Do you guys understand what Mr. Floyd was explaining? If you've got a whole quarter of ground and your house isn't parceled off of that, now all of a sudden your property line becomes the whole quarter of ground. So, and I know in the past, when we've talked about setbacks of other things or anything, that has been but not everything's a perfect little 10-acre acreage with a parcel line, right? Mhm. And I think that's why, we're in the, that's why the way things are right now. Going to facility.
Just a quick question to verify, to build a house, don't you have to have a parcel already though? You can't just build a house if you have a building eligibility on that quarter, can you?
If you own the quarter, a bare quarter, and you want to build the house, you absolutely, yeah.
As long as there's building eligibility.
Mm-hmm.
You can just,
have to parcel it out.
you don't?
No,
Quarter is your parcel.
the quarter is your parcel. Yep.
Well, so.
Now, if you
like in
want to
my-
sell, if you want to sell it to your neighbor and change ownership and then you would need to parcel that out, sell that parcel to the neighbor, and you'd own the remainder of the quarter.
I'd have to see how I did that, but I thought, because you have two per 80, correct?
What's that?
You have two eligibilities per 80, right?
Mhm.
So I have an 80 on my home place. We already used the one building eligibility for the home farm. And then we just built the second house on, it was the same property, maybe that was the difference there. That's why we had to parcel it differently, to separate it from the property, because you can't have two dwellings on the same parcel.
Place, correct.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep,
Gotcha.
that's right, McCade.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep. All right, anybody else? So, we had some really good comments and good discussion, and I don't know what you guys think, but, I guess what we've kind of been doing with these is, letting them settle a little bit and come back and take another swing. What are your thoughts? Commissioner Green, you're usually
Yeah,
good to
so,
go first.
I think I appreciate the fact that this commission has taken the opportunity to hear public feedback and then come back next month and after having digested what we've heard today versus just, trying to make off-the-cuff decisions. Since I wasn't here last month, that's what I would appreciate, just because it gives me the ability to digest some of this stuff, but.
Guys?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, there's a lot of input here tonight, and we've got one page of homework that's got 8 bullet points that we can all do a little research on and stuff. So I think there's a lot here to digest and come back here next month and dive into it some more.
Mr. Mosier? Thoughts?
Yeah. I'd agree with that, and I just thought it was interesting that, folks that do farm in the county and have operations or are from operations, and even people who don't, it just seems like there's this undercurrent where people want the small farmers to succeed and they want more of them. I think it's kind of like how everyone kind of feels. They're coming at it from different ways, but it seems like that's the ultimate thing, and they don't want to get crowded out by these huge operations. So, But
Okay, Commissioner Schmidt?
I just want to say that commend you guys, or the planning board, for taking this approach, because you hear from all sides, you hear all opinions, and you vet the subject, but you got real live information here to digest, so I think this process is probably as open and fair as can be. And when you make recommendations to the commission, you're not just, I mean, you've got solid evidence that, from constituents that have helped you put your recommendations together. So Mike, congratulations to you. I think this is a great process, Eric, and to all of you members of the board. Because you are the safeguards, actually. You're the first line of defense on so many of these other issues.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to everybody that showed up and participated in all these discussions. I too agree that this process is important. I go back to the livestock one and use that as an example because that was brought forward by a citizen and it was a challenge to us to look at. And now here we are with a room full of people looking at it and having a conversation, and I think that's a very democratic thing to do. And so, and it's only as good as the amount of people that will come here and be part of the process. So I appreciate that. With that, I think where we kind of left this is that, here, I'm looking for adjournment, but we do have one more topic.
There is another one.
We're gonna talk about this again next month. And again, the big thing, I think that the starter thing to talk about, and yeah, there's gonna be some fine tunes within the ordinance itself, but if this is a format that we would want to go forward with, what's the number, what's the feet per animal unit, right? I think that's the ultimate decider, so.
And is there a minimum setback, I think?
And is there a minimum setback and a cap, right?
Right.
Because we do have, for like example, I forget which county it is, Jared probably knows, where the setback increases to a certain amount and then that's as much as a setback can get, is that right? You've studied a lot of different
Off the top of my head, I think it's Yankton
Yankton
County.
County, I
And it's 2.64 feet per animal unit with a cap of 1.5 miles. I'm like pretty sure that's what it is, but I'll have to double check that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's another topic I think could potentially come up out of it too, so. So yeah, good. We'll move on to the transfer of housing eligibilities. Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I be excused for a moment?
You will, yeah. If we need to take a break, you bet. Toby's back in action.
So, kind of a little background on this is that we started talking about building eligibility transfers in January as well. And kind of, I would say, a little impetus of staff as well. Staff is the one that works with the individuals that go through this transfer process. And we've been working with a family that wants to bring the kid back to the farm. And we've been working with them for about 6 months too, to work through all this process too. And so really the main start of this is that a discussion about the requirement of same ownership for transfer of eligibilities. And really from a staff perspective, we kind of look at that as some unnecessary bureaucracy. And next month, hopefully, we're gonna have the application before you finally. I'll detail exactly the process that we've gone through to allow a child to build back on the farm or the acreage or whatever it would be. But through that discussion, the Planning Commission sent up a draft to the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners in their motion requested that we take additional input regarding building eligibilities. We've been talking about this again for about 6 months. I think we've heard about every scenario there is. It'd be good, though, to take some additional public comment. Again, from a staff perspective, we really are really, and maybe the prospect that we need to do is work with these individuals that staff works with to bring them forward, so you can hear their stories and hear their concerns about really the ownership part of it. The building eligibility part of it, though, there's a separate section in the ordinance. There's actually 3 separate sections within the ordinance, within the A1 agricultural district. What we put on the agenda for tonight was, whoops, I got the wrong one there. So this is the current law. There is no draft. This is the current section of the ordinance that established in 1995 that each quarter in the county has a building eligibility or a building right. Along with that, in 1995, they also established a lot of records, so I continually hear every day, well, there's 5 on that corner, and how did that happen? Well, if they were platted prior to 1995, they remain the right to build on it. And so if you're aware of it, and if you look at plats every day like I do, you knew that there was quite a bit of knowledge at that time in 1995, so we platted the most we've ever platted in the county was that point before it became effective with it. But with it, so again, every quarter, that's 40 acres, has a building right or building eligibility on it. And then also within the ordinance allows the transfer of those eligibilities. And so that's a density restriction. So in 1995, I wasn't here, none of you were obviously here at that. I don't even think Commissioner Schmidt was around at that particular, yeah, you weren't around either, so. But from what I can tell, looking at the files, and I'll tell you they're not great files, but what you can tell from the files is that really that there was a concern that the county had quite a bit of litigation with subdivisions throughout the county. I think at that time about every subdivision we were involved in litigation with. But there was concerns from the townships about road access. There was concerns from the cities about premature development. That's the thing that cities will typically say is premature type development. Also 95, for those history buffs, you know that was probably the largest tax overhaul in the state history with Governor Janklow's property tax reduction. So I think it all kind of tied together that there was a lot of concern with, is there going to be enough money for growth and development? Concerns with the townships, concerns with that, concerns with neighbors, there was a lot of concerns. So that was kind of the impetus for the 1 per quarter. Pretty standard though. Minnehaha County, all surrounding counties to Lincoln County have it, minus Iowa. Iowa, if you build a house, you need a conditional use to build a house over there. But typically, all the South Dakota counties either have the 1 per quarter or large lot zoning, which they call that, which you need 20 acres or 40 acres, whatever it might be for that. But it's a form of density. It's a form of establishing it. But what's unique about building eligibilities is the government created the framework, but we turn it over to the free market. It's turned over to the private sector. We don't control any part about it other than the framework of it. So the building eligibilities exist out with the private sector. They sell them for whatever they want to sell them for, what the market absorbs. There isn't any more created. They're limited to what they are. We did, at one point in time, we did create a map that's kind of interesting to look at from the perspective that so we overlay the quarters actually throughout the entire county. You got to zoom in quite a bit. But essentially, if you heard me speak at the Board of Commissioners meeting last week, rough estimate is, and throwing out the lots of record and all that stuff, is there's about 14,000 building eligibilities remaining in the county. So if there isn't a house on any of those little dots there probably is the right to build a house there. But from a staff perspective, we spend countless hours doing research on these. The realtors, auctioneers, private property owners, it's constant, it's every day. They're requesting determinations of their building eligibilities on the property. So it is kind of intensive from a staff perspective on it. But to the best of my knowledge, there's still quite a bit of building eligibilities there. We work with landowners. I know it's, Commissioner Scott and I argue about this every time we do a building eligibility because, staff and the landowners, we have found a workaround really on the same ownership requirement, so it's occurring. But really, from a transparency perspective, it'd be good if we codified it in a code on that part of it. So that's really staff's perspective, but again, the Board of Commissioners has asked that we take additional public comment on building eligibility. Staff is prepared to know really changes or recommendations on the changes of the actual building eligibility process. But with that, I'll turn it back to you and answer your questions you have for staff, and then we'll take public input on it.
Mr. Brown, can you just give us an update? Some of us watched the meeting, maybe some of us didn't, but I think what we decided to do last month, if I'm right, we decided to send the 2 drafts up to the Board of County Commissioners and see what kind of their thoughts were. Can you give us kind of an update on how that process worked?
Yeah, so the planning commission sent up two options. The first option is, on both options, you would take away the same owner requirement so that transfers could be without having the same owner requirement. And then the second option would be limiting the transfer to just within the township, so it couldn't leave. It'd have to stay within the same township.
Okay. And was there any discussion, or I guess what was the action from the Board of Commissioners?
I'd defer to Commissioner Schmidt if he wants to answer that, I guess, but, yeah.
There again, I don't know that there was really any, what I would call discussion.
Yeah, didn't,
I mean, I can tell you that, I'm giving my perspective, I have some real concerns about when you put housing eligibilities out on the market. The last thing we need is a subdivision where somebody accumulates 15 or 20 eligibilities and then decides to build, these things because they have property and then you get a subdivision. I've always been concerned about that. And there's real potential for that out there. So how do you limit that? Well, maybe you stay within the township itself. And that gives those local residents, they gotta live with their neighbors. So, but we have not had a formal discussion here, one way or the other, on those two proposals.
okay.
Well, what I would add to that is that the intent of staying within the same township was, we heard quite a bit of public input, and this goes back 2 or 3 years that we've talked about this over the years. A lot of comments from the township that they didn't want to lose the tax base. So if it leaves the township, it would leave the tax base of their individual township. So that was really the impetus of the can't leave the township part of it. So we want to make sure they preserve their tax base there. I did in between last week and even today, I've gotten a lot of comments from the cities, from the municipalities. And so I've had to reassure them that they control their subdivision authorities, so none of these changes would take away any of their authority to require platting or to prevent subdivisions if that's what they so chose to do. So there was concern from that aspect too, but.
Mr. Brown, could you also give everybody just kind of a quick overview of what has changed as far as that planned development area in the northern part of the county and how that is different than it used to be, and in this area where there's a demand for more housing, how that was designed to work and how we've actually utilized that a few times? Because there's a lot of noise about how that part of the world needs more housing and the opportunities aren't there, but can you just tell us how we share with everybody how that works?
So on December 24th of 2024, the County Board of Commissioners adopted the current land use plan for the county. And that land use plan was a major shift in the current policy we had. And so what that really did was it said that, and prior to that, and I know the Planning Commission is very aware of this, a number of recommendations of the Planning Commission for denial on change of zones was not followed by the Board of Commissioners. So really, the new comprehensive plan, we tried to work with the Board of Commissioners, the Planning Commission to really identify it. There was a push a demand that we had for additional residential development. And so in the new comprehensive plan, we identified a planned growth area, and this is a federally designated area. It's a growth area. And so within that area, building eligibilities exist, but they also don't. So potentially in this area that's the pink or the red, light red, is a petitioner could petition to do a change of zone to rural residential. And if you recall, last year we did 2 of those, and those were both unanimously approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. Because prior to that, anything that's within the planned growth area, staff works with the city to make sure it's consistent with the city's growth plan, because they're the ones that are going to deal with it in the future. Or they're the ones we want them to deal with it into the future. And so just for instance, right, I met last Tuesday night with the City of Harrisburg's Planning Commission. I'll meet next week with the City of Harrisburg's City Council. And so we go through the process of amending their comprehensive plan to make sure there's an application that's consistent with that. So there's a petition to change part of the property to the north of Harrisburg to rural residential. So we're working through that process. So with that process, we work with the city staff, and I shouldn't say, we work with city staff, and then it goes to the planning commission and the elected officials. So in the past, we would just work with staff, and then the boards would say, well, what's this speak for the city as a whole? So now we work directly with the planning commission and the elected officials. And I tell them up front that, it's their decision. If they choose to say that this isn't consistent with their planning, then we bring that forward recommendation. We would say no, denial of that thing. But primarily then, we work with the city to make sure it's consistent with their growth policies. And then after that takes place, we do have a neighborhood meeting. So staff stands out and on the field with the applicant, and we invite the neighbors within 500 feet, which is the statute for state law for that. And with that, then we answer any questions that they may have, any concerns that they may have, and I always say, look, I'm not here to convince you how to feel on this. We just want to make sure you have your questions answered. Number one thing that they always tell me is that we don't get that when we come to the meetings, of course. And I say, well, that's because it's a public hearing, and they're not supposed to engage. They're just supposed to listen and take public comment in with it. So I think from that process, it's worked really well, but it has opened up a lot of growth and development in the northern part of the county.
So in a situation where hypothetically, say, that area, that planned development area runs out of housing eligibilities, that won't necessarily stop the development, correct?
No.
Yep. I think that's important for people to understand that there isn't a huge need for additional housing eligibilities in there because we've addressed that when we addressed the planned development.
Not in the pink area.
What's that? In the pink area, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So then when we're talking about these transfers and we're talking about building eligibilities, it really pertains to the green area, the outside of that planned development. Would you agree?
Yeah. No, in the pink area, it's just a $350 application fee. They don't have to pay the $100,000 for the building eligibilities.
Right.
So, yeah.
And by kind of unhandcuffing those rural residentials, you're in a way we're adding more density than what was there with just the housing eligibilities, correct?
But,
I mean, I'm not saying that's bad, but I just want everybody to understand that.
I mean, the number one thing, and I went to every public meeting and we did stakeholder meetings, the number one thing that we heard at all levels about planning in the county is the lack of communication between the entities. And so we've done better at that. We've overcome that. We work with everybody. We try to do that. And I think the number one thing, and I know the Planning Commission was always concerned about this, the danger with premature development is it's not consistent with the cities. If it's not consistent with the cities, they're not going to annex it, which means you create an island in the cities, which is, it causes us, the county, to utilize resources that we just don't have to provide services to people that probably should be within the city.
Yep.
So it's really a tax, we're looking at it from a tax perspective.
And we have some of those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all the donuts that you can see in there.
Yeah, you can look at it right on the map. So-
And, and I'm going to say, a lot of our complaints that we deal with the county, and that the staff has to investigate, go through things, we're driving through the city to get to the complaints.
Mhm.
And that's a challenge, and then there's no answer to it because you have people that have been living there for 40, 50 years, and now they're being, surrounded by city development and, So again, our role is to get voluntary compliance, and it's a challenge in those areas, a lot of those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yep.
So, does anybody have any questions? I think we all understand that. It's just my view, where I think we're at is, we made a decision last month, and we sent the 2 drafts to the county commission, hoping to get some discussion and feedback on where we should go, and not blaming anybody, but we just, for whatever reason, didn't get that back, so we're still in the same spot. So I don't know that necessarily anything new, as far as the 2 the 2 options that we sent for some suggestions, that anything huge has changed, unless it has, at least it hasn't in my mind. So does anybody want, you got any comments or additions to where we're at? And then I guess I'll ask Commissioner Schmidt a question. Commissioner Schmidt, if we were to send these back to your board, since you're here and acting as the planning commission commissioner, would you be able to facilitate
We'd put it
some
on
some dialogue?
We'd put it on the agenda.
Yep.
And get some action taken.
Okay.
So.
I think that'd be
That's-
good.
Pretty.
Just have a point of order, shouldn't we have a public hearing here first before they go back to the commissioners?
I don't know. Mr. Brown?
That's not what's being discussed.
It's not a public hearing, we didn't advertise it. Take public input.
What's that?
You can take public input.
Okay. Yeah, maybe explain where we're at in the process.
So I think it's what I mentioned at the beginning is that this is somewhat of a confusing process because we've never done it before, where the planning commission has initiated a discussion and sent recommendations to the board of commissioners. Under state law, they remand back to us and then we can conduct a public hearing. So we're not going to expend tax funds until we can, advertise for a public hearing and do all that stuff. But they did remand it back.
Okay.
So, and I'll talk about that, the last item of the agenda, that part of it. But what they asked is that in addition, what their motion is that we take additional public comment on building eligibilities. They specifically called out Mr. Ventura.
Okay, so are we gonna have a public hearing on the 2 drafts?
Yes,
When?
July.
Oh, so we don't need to.
If that's what you so choose.
We don't need to
We'll
talk
talk about that, no.
We need to talk about those right now. So what are we talking about?
So essentially, they asked us to take additional public comment from Mr. Ventura.
Okay.
And Mr. Ventura has some ideas about like lotteries and those different, he's mentioned that before at the
Yep.
meetings. Those changes would apply to this section, not the transfer of eligibility. But his mind it would, so I'll let him kind of convey what that is for that, so, does that make sense?
So. Okay, I'm a little lost, but I'll go with it. So are we to let Tony, Mr.
Yeah.
Ventura talk?
We'll just open it up for public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, so the public input, not comment, public input is just on building eligibilities, changes to building eligibilities.
Okay.
Because I believe Mr. Ventura at the previous planning commission meeting talked about a lottery and some other items there.
So we're still talking public input about building eligibilities within the back of our head that there'll be 2 ordinances that will be for public hearing potentially next month.
No.
No.
So there's no ordinances that are 2 of them that are you guys debating on? or
Are we,
still-
are we not having a public hearing on the 2 ordinances?
So that we have to schedule a public hearing for, we'll do that in July.
Or July?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm asking.
Yeah, but that's not tonight.
No, I understand that.
Because
That's
now
what I'm saying.
we gotta advertise, and then at that meeting, it'll be a for and against and no dialogue
For those 2.
for those 2 ordinances.
Okay.
And then my understanding, and I could be completely wrong, I've talked to Tony a couple times, but I take additional public input from Tony where he thinks about building eligibility should be. Not to say you can't comment next month on those other 2 drafts
Yeah,
and
yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But this is really just, in general, is there lotteries, we get rid of building
This would be a whole-
eligibilities?
This is another,
Separate ordinance under this section.
this is a different
Yeah.
issue. This won't be tagged on to the.
No, this would be, this
Okay.
is gonna be another 6 months like we've been talking
Now I'm
about
following
that
you.
stuff, yeah.
All right,
yeah.
very good.
So, Yeah. Clear?
Now it is.
Now I'm confused, though. So, okay.
Right, so we'll invite Mr. Ventura up.
Yeah, yep.
All right, very good.
I was confused when I was watching the commission meeting
Yeah, I'm with it now, though.
going on.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Ventura, for
let me
being
ask
with
the,
us.
yeah, let me ask the question. So this is a public discussion for all in the audience, correct? Not just myself?
Correct.
Okay.
I believe so.
'Cause, yeah, it was just my name was brought up, so I wanted to clarify for everybody the
Well, I think that's-
understanding.
Yeah, but I think that,
No,
yeah, I think it was directed that,
yeah, and I think you need to listen to Commissioner Aaron's comments from the last planning, or from the last county commission meeting,
yep,
and then you'll have a clear identification of what he was asking for.
I did, yeah, and I know it mentioned your name, so that's why we called on you.
Okay, so we've been dragging in the weeds way late tonight, so I think I'm just gonna cut back a little and then feel free to ask questions because this is the start of a building process. So option one, this is kind of it's run like a liquor license basically. So basically, everybody in Lincoln County that has housing abilities can sell them anywhere they want, and then the county sets prices for like a 5 or 20 acre parcel. And let's say a 5 acre parcel would have a price of $750,000 for housing eligibility. So you purchase the land, you can purchase that from the county. These are all set from the county, not myself. 20 acre parcel could be like $500,000. So you buy your 20 acre parcel, you buy your housing eligibility, you plop a house up. So the people that own the housing eligibilities can sell them anywhere they want for any reason, for any price. And then the county sets a price also. So then the county would set that like a liquor license, so it'd be how many they can set per year, how many they want to sell by county rights. Remove the right to farm. So that's part one, that's one option. The other option is so we did have the right to build 160 acres or 160 housing eligibilities on our parcels. And through the gracious of the county, 156 of them were moved from each parcel. And so at $125,000 each times 156 housing eligibilities would be a loss of every farmer in Lincoln County of $1.9 million. So the way to try to fix that, I don't think anybody has a appetite to go back to the 160 houses per eligibility, but I think when you we need to have the discussion that bringing it back to townships even, and say if you have 40 acres, you can build 10. Because that's the thing I hear from or from townships is we need to be able to bring people home. We are taking all these out of there and then the people are leaving and we're not bringing in the tax bases. The other is an option of 4. The numbers are all set later on. It's to be discussed. Part of it is driving down to help drive down taxes, bring in kids to schools, lower taxes, more positive and smart development for all the agricultural district. Helps bring in the lower tax rate. If we used to have the 20 acres was the consolidation for agricultural breaks on taxes. I think if you bring these down, you should bring the acre size down to 10 or 20 acres. So you can bring in smaller farming operations. You can also bring in organics and things like that. It will increase the housing eligibilities in the townships, which is one of the biggest concerns I've heard from townships in general. And then so, just to kind of speed things up, when you talk about we need 100,000 houses in Lincoln County in the next 5 to 20 years, we're talking about 14,000 housing eligibilities. We're just kind of cutting the edge of the corner here. So you really have to define what we're doing with these areas. But there are places that would be very desirable for building, like Newton Hills, down the Hudson Valley, things like that, where housing developments would see fit, where you're really not having confinements right next to the Sioux River. And so there's options for us to do things differently. So I know Eric's looking at me funny. Jim's been kind of rolling his eyes, and so that's okay.
I'm taking notes, Tony.
Right, so that's the start of it, but it basically opens up the process so you have more housing eligibilities. So if you want to bring your mom home and you don't really like her enough, and she wants to come home, you can build her own house on your own farm.
simple correlation, but I think fair. And the biggest thing I hear is, well, you can't bring your kids home, or we have in here where you can't build more than one house on a quarter of land or 40, on a parcel of 40. Well, if you already have one, how do you build 5 into 4? Last time I did math, that system doesn't work. But this system basically addresses 154, 176, addresses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The public road discussion is another discussion. It fixes problems on the county on 5 and where you can move 5 to 4. Number 1, if you look at some of this, on this where you can only do a quarter on quarter, it doesn't work. The building site on flooded is not addressed. So there's a lot of times where Lincoln County said, everybody gets a housing eligibility. You used to get 160, now you get 1 per quarter. When a lot of times you look, if it's part of the flood plan, it's worthless. You have no alternatives from one to another. We need to have some flexibility in there. So that's where I'm at. I hope there are some questions, and I think it needs to be discussed further in detail. But I think these are 2 good viable options, and so you have to consider it.
Any questions for Mr. Ventura? No? Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. All right. With that, any other comments? Anybody else have any other comments?
Who said we needed that many more housing eligibilities or housing? Where did that come from?
I don't know. Tony, she has a question for you.
Sorry. Why does Lincoln County need that many more housing? If you look at the comp plan and you look at even the drafts of even the comp plan that's been proposed, the population is increasing at a massive amount, not slowing down. And so you have to address that direction. Northern?
That's the southern side of Sioux Falls.
South side. You get a lot of draw for people when you come south.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Sarah Stever. I know we're talking about building eligibilities, but in research, the CAFO ordinance we were working on, I learned something that has kind of changed my mind about them. So originally, I thought we would be decimating our school districts and townships by allowing these building eligibilities to leave. Therefore, we needed to keep them in the township. But I no longer think that would be the culprit and why we will have fewer people living in any given township within the county and lower tax base to pull from. I think the real culprit is the farm consolidation, including the large-scale CAFOs, not all the CAFOs, the large-scale CAFOs, that are driving out the population, including small farms and the families that go with them. That's a much bigger issue than losing tax revenue because a landowner doesn't have a family member to bring back to their operation. And in fact, that might be what's keeping them from coming back. So this trend has been developing for decades and it's too complex to fully discuss tonight. But large-scale CAFOs increase farm size and gross farm sales, which eliminates smaller farms over time. So research shows consistently that the social and economic well-being of local rural communities benefits from increasing the number of farmers, not simply increasing the volume of the commodity produced. So if you want stronger townships and communities, cap really big CAFOs and not building eligibilities. So first of all, we're not taxing unused building eligibilities outright right now, nor should we. Secondly, landowners pretty much know whether or not they're going to need a building eligibility. And I appreciate very much what this young gentleman who's not here now said. We have a quarter section. We would have 4 eligibilities. We have used 2 of them. The 2 that are left are priceless to me. I would not sell them for anything because I do hope my kids come back. However, if I had a section and I had 16 of them to start with, I might be thinking about, wow, what could I do with a couple of those if that in fact would build a loafing shed or some better fencing or something, to start out an operation. I think we should have that option, and I don't think it necessarily has to be right next to the township because I don't think that's why the township ends up losing its tax base. So the number of 4 per quarter seems like it just was an amount that came up by the county at some point. But that choice has governed the decisions for families for years now, and in fairness to them, they are now accepted as currency. So farmers that want to bring their kids back to the farm can live and keep their building eligibilities in place. Farmers that don't can sell off this asset and reinvest in their operation. If each potential sale is assessed a fee or something along the plans that Tony put forward and is reviewed by planning and zoning, maybe it's got a conditional use permit, then we will not lose control of the county. The townships and schools will also benefit over time. So if you want to preserve the tax base in the township or school district, then address the part of the iceberg we don't see, not the building eligibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rodney Miles, 27530, 470th Avenue, Lenox. I think the thing that you got to be careful about talking, moving eligibilities around the county is the fact that any land that you've ever seen sold in the last 25 years, the auction ad, the radio, whatever, it lists how many building eligibilities is on this quarter. And you talk to any auctioneer, you talk to any real estate agent, those eligibilities are worth more in the northern part than they are in the southern part. And if you're gonna start opening it up to the county, you're gonna have an awful lot of people that bought property with eligibilities, basically holding on to them or banking on selling them off to help pay for the rest of that property. And so I think going back to what option one is basically a stranglehold. You've landlocked a person's opportunities to basically land adjoining that parcel. Opening up to, in the townships, the schools do not lose any money if it happens to leave that school district into another one, because it's taxed on ag property the way it is, but a school actually possibly could gain. Townships the same way. If they are utilized in that township, the township gains revenue. Same way with county. County opens up more opportunities for people to be able to transfer these around. But the other thing, you've got a lot of, we talk about young farmers and helping them get going and stuff. So say younger farmer buys 80 acres, has 2 eligibilities on it. He can't move that eligibility unless he has a neighbor. Well, if the neighbor's raising livestock and stuff, he probably don't really want those eligibilities. But if it moves within the township, nobody loses any kind of income. That young farmer could maybe sell and expand his herd, or mom and pa want to build a new house. And it creates new opportunities for tax revenue for the counties. And so I think we got to be careful about basically putting too much restriction on as far as the adjoining land personally is just a stranglehold on people. But if you go find a medium to where I don't think moving these eligibilities within a township is going to change the price of them whatsoever, really. It's all going to come down to basically a willing buyer and a willing seller agreeing on a price. And I don't think that's going to change, where if you flood the market with eligibilities from the south coming to the north, there's going to be a lot of revenue loss for people that purchase land and stuff, and I think you got to be careful about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rodney. Any other comment towards what Mr. Ventura had addressed? I don't think he's here anymore, but, okay, seeing none, I guess that's it. Guys, can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Green. Second, Moser.
All right, it's been moved, properly seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.